Hi everyone, this is Ola from Singlet Academy. We're going to begin the JavaScript beginner series, and today we're going to be talking about JavaScript variables. Uh, as you might see on my screen, I'm in Visual Studio Code, and I'm on a Mac. So if you don't have Visual Studio Code, you can just go on the internet. You can type Visual Studio Code, and then you can download for your operating system. It's a really basic thing to do. So I have a playground folder here, and then inside this playground folder, I have two files and a folder known as assets. You don't need to worry yourself about this for now because uh, at this point in the tutorial, at this point in the series, we are not going to make use of what we have here in the assets folder. Uh, if you want this starter file, or this, yeah, if you want this, I can leave a link down uh, in the description where you can just get it and then you can start along with me. Okay, so I'm in this index.html file, and then in my index.html file, I have my boilerplate HTML template. Okay, so you don't need to bother yourself with this style because it's not a CSS series, it's a JavaScript series. Inside my body tag, though, I have this h1, and then it's holding this text JavaScript variables. Now, I have my script.js file here. It's empty, and then I'm referencing it with the script tag. So we use script tag to reference JavaScript file in our HTML file. So I'm using the source attributes of this script tag to reference this script.js file. So I can open this in my browser. To make this easy, I'm going to use an extension known as Live Server. So if you don't have it, you can go to here, this extension, and then you can just type Live Server. It should bring suggestion. It's saying unable to search the marketplace when offline. I'm offline, really, I forgot to on my hotspot, but don't let me waste your time. So once you type live server here, it should bring it up. See, I have it installed. I have it installed. You may not have it installed. So when it brings it up, you can just click the install flag and then you're good to go. Okay, so let me go back here to reveal our files. I'm going to open this with live server. So I'm going to right click inside my VS Code and I'm going to open with live server. So if I open this, my default browser opens up. You can see server is started at port 5500. Okay, so I'm on a Mac. My default server is Safari. So it's loading. I don't know why it's taking so long. It shouldn't take this long. So as we can see, we have JavaScript variables. Okay, but I don't want to use Safari. I would prefer Chrome. So I'm going to open Chrome. So I'm going to open Chrome. And then when Chrome opens up, I'll just paste the URL there. And then we should still get the same thing. JavaScript variables, okay? So let me just open my console. So to open your console in Chrome, when you're on Mac, you press Command Option I. Okay? If your window is Control Shift C, I think so. Or is it? No, Control Shift I on Windows. Okay. So our console, there's nothing here because we've not written any code. Let me go back to VS Code. Let me go to my script.js file. Okay. JavaScript variables usually comprise three parts. There is the keyword part. There is the variable name, which is known as the initializer, and then there is the identifier. The variable name is known as identifier, and then there is the value part, which is the value that the variable points to. Okay. Some regard JavaScript variables as containers where we store values. Some refer to JavaScript variables as pointers to boxes storing values, depending on whichever one you like, depending on whichever one applies to you based on your programming experience. But we're not going to waste time debating the semantics of that right now. So in JavaScript, we can declare variables with three keywords. We can use var, let, const. And each of these keywords have their idiosyncrasies. Each of them have their own peculiar behaviors. And then we're going to be exploring that one after the other. So we can start with the traditional var. So I can do var greet, and then I can do console.log greet. Okay, if I press save, let's see what we have in there. We have undefined. Okay, so I've declared a variable with var keyword. This is variable declaration. I'm yet to assign it, but I'm still able to log this variable greet to the console. And the reason is because when we declare variables with var or let keyword, JavaScript assigns a special value undefined, so you can see, to such variables. Undefined is, you can think of undefined as a value that has no utility. It has no useful. It has no utility. It has no useful information that you can use in your program, so to speak. So variables declared with var or let keyword, they are, to show you this once and for all, I do let and I save, I still get undefined. Okay, so we'll talk about const much later. So variables declare, let me go back to var, var and let keyword, they assign a special value greet. Of course, I can assign this variable now, say greet is equals to hello. Okay, well, okay, in JavaScript, it's not compulsory you put this semicolon, but then it's a good programming practice that you have the semicolon. Okay, so if I save this, see, I've assigned a value, a string value, hello, to this greet variable. Now, let's see what we have. We have hello. Okay, good. Now, one of the behaviors of variables declared with var keyword is this thing known as hoisting. Okay, like the way you hoist a flag to the top of a pole. So it turns out that in JavaScript, variables declared with var keyword are hoisted to the top of the scope, which is to say, with what I have here, if I were to do this, if I were to take this to the top here and then save, let's see what we get. We get undefined. Okay, now let me explain what's happening here. The JavaScript engine says greet. Okay, it looks at the rest of the program. What might greet be pointing to? Okay, and it says greet is declared with var keyword. Okay, fine. So what JavaScript does is to hoist this var greet to the top of the scope. And var greet, like we saw the other time, prior to us assigning this value to greet, we saw that a special value undefined was assigned to it. So JavaScript essentially is hoisting this var greet declaration to the top here. So when var greet get hoisted to the top, that value is undefined. Then we're able to log it to the console. But it's not, so you see what is happening now. The declaration is hoisted, but the assignment, the value of the variable, it's not hoisted. Only its declaration is why we're getting undefined. Otherwise, we should have gotten hello. So it turns out that the declaration of a variable is what is hoisted. Okay? The value assigned to the variable is not hoisted. So that's one behavior of var. var is hoisted to the top of the scope. Before I touch on let's do more with var. Okay, so another behavior of var is let me cut this. So we have var greet. Then greet is assigned a value hello. This greet was declared with var keyword, which allows me to do this. Let me paste this there. And then instead of logging greets to the console, let me do this. Window.greet. Let's see. I still get hello. I still get that value assigned to greet, even though I'm attaching greet to window. And you might be wondering, what is window? Well, window is the global object in our web browser. Okay? So when we declare variables with var keyword, we're able to attach that variable to the window object, which is the global object in our web browser, and we're still able to get the same value assigned to that variable. Okay? If I were to change this to let isn't going to allow me to do this. Let me save. Let's see what we get. We get undefined. Okay? So the takeaway here is variables declared with var keyword, we can attach them to the window object, which is the global object in the browser. But let and const, we cannot attach those variables to the window objects. Okay? Let me cancel. Okay, no. Let me cancel this altogether. Okay. Let's talk about another behavior of var. var is not block scoped. Let and const are block scoped. Okay? If I do this, if I say if true, so this is a conditional statement. If true, that is, if this condition is true, okay, true is Boolean, then do what we have inside this code block. That's what this is saying. So if true, if I say var value is equals to, what should I do now? I can say value equals to block. Okay, anything like that. Value equals to block. Okay. Now, if I do console.log value, pay attention, I'm declaring and initializing this variable. I'm defining this variable with var keyword, and I save. Fair enough, I got block. Okay. If I comment this out, so this is how we comment in JavaScript. This is one of the ways we comment, /. Okay, on Mac you can just press command then /. Okay, so outside of here, outside of this code block, I can do console.log value Let's see what happens. I still get block. And the reason why this is happening is because variables declared with var, they are not block scoped. What I mean by they are not block scoped is because what I mean by they are not block scoped, sorry, is that they are not local to the block in which they are defined. So you see, this value, which is pointing to this string block, is bleeding outside of this environment, and then I'm still able to access it here. So var is block scoped, okay? Let, on the other hand, var is not block scoped. Let and const, on the other hand, they are block scoped. You see, if this variable were to be block scoped, we won't be able to access this value outside of here, but we're still able to access it. So, which means var is not block scoped. If I change this to let, see what happens. Uncut reference error. So, let is block scoped in the sense that when we define variable or declare the variable inside the code block with let or const keyword, the same if I use const, the same thing happens. See, I'm getting uncut reference error, value is not defined. So let and const, they are block scoped. So if I want to get the value here, I have to comment this out and then uncomment this, because I can only access the value inside of here. And remember, we set the condition if true. Okay? So that allows what we have here to run. So if I save this now, I should get block. Remember what I said, const and let variables are block scoped. So block in the sense that they are local to this block environment in which we define them. So if I use let here again, I still get. Okay, good. Now, another behavior that you might be familiar with, or you might want to be familiar with, is var is function scope. Okay, var is function scope. And this is how we define a function in JavaScript. We use the function keyword, okay, and then a function name, a pair of parentheses, and then curly braces. Okay, so if I do var greet, then I set this to hi. Okay. If I do console.log greet, okay, and then outside of here, if I call, of course, if you want a function to run, you have to invoke it or call it. So this is how we invoke a function. The function name and then pair of parentheses. If it has a parameter, we just pass the argument here. Okay, so let's see what we get. We get hi, fair enough. Okay. Now, this variable greet is declared inside this function body. So I'm logging the value here, so that when I invoke the function, the value gets logged to the console. Say I try to access greet outside of this function. Let's see. I first got hi when I invoke the function, and it says uncut reference error, greet is not defined. And the reason why that is happening is because var is function scoped. Whenever we declare a variable with var keyword inside a function, that variable is local to that function. We cannot access it outside of it. Okay? Now, const and let keywords, they are both block scoped and function scoped. Okay? So if we use let or const here, we're still going to get the same behavior. Okay. So that's another behavior of var. Okay. Now let's look at another example. Our traditional for loop, for instance, if we have for, okay, so we set condition inside this parenthesis. I'm going to start with var. So we have var I equals to 0. Okay, and then you say hi less than 5. Then you say hi plus plus. I'm using var to declare this iterator variable. Okay, so we've not talked about loops. We're going to talk about loops later, but as an appetizer, inside this for loop, inside this parenthesis, we have 3 parts there. The first part, before the first semicolon, is known as the initializer. Okay, and here we have the expression, and then here we have the increment. Okay, now I have this iterator, okay, and I've set my iterator variables with this condition. I'm using var. Now look at this. If I come outside of it and then I say console.log hi, pay attention. I've declared hi with var keyword. If I save this, let's see what happens. I get 5. Like we said, var is not block scoped. That's one. So var, this variable hi declared with var keyword, is causing the iterator variable to bleed outside of this loop, and it will still able to get it here. This behavior is fixed if we use let. See, uncut reference error. This is the normal behavior. You're not supposed to be able to reference a variable outside of this environment. But because we use var the other time, we're able to reference it. And that's because var had such quirky behavior. Okay? Okay, let me go back to var. Of course, if you use const, you're only going to get once. But if you use const as well, it doesn't bleed out. You still get, what is it called? You still get uncaught type error here. Okay, assignment to constant variable. That's because when we use const, we are not supposed to reassign a variable. Const is for constant. They are for variables that we do not wish to reassign. Okay, so let me go back to var here. I do var. Okay, now say we wish to pass a method inside of here. Okay, before I do that, if I just do console.log hi, I get the iteration. Let's go to the browser. See, it works as it should. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The iteration works. Now, say we wish to pass a method inside of this code block. Say we wish to do set timeout, for instance. The set timeout takes a callback. Okay, then we do something here. Say we know the console.log hi, and then we set the time 0. I'm using var. Pay attention to what will happen. I get 5 times. This is not the normal behavior, but because I'm using var, I'm getting 5 times. So what is happening here? When we use var to define a variable inside a for loop like this, and we're passing a method like this set timeout, what happens is the value of the iterator, or is it the iteration? The value of the iteration that caused the iterator to exit, the value that caused the loop to exit, which is 5, is bleeding outside. What am I saying? If you look at here, for instance, we said var I is equal to 0, I is less than 5, I plus plus, which means at the point where I is less than 5, this variable exits. So we're getting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 iteration, 5 times. This loop, it loops 5 times. Okay, so that 5th time, that value that caused this loop to exit is being passed as reference to this set timeout method. Okay, and that value is what is being logged to the console, 5. But if we change this to let's see what happens. We get the normal behavior. That's because in let, the variables are reassigned for every iteration, even with this set timeout method. Okay, so that's another behavior of var that you may want to pay attention to. Okay, I think we've talked a bit about var and about let. Let's talk a bit about const. Okay, if you use const here, you're just going to get 0, I think. Okay, so you get an encore type error assigning to constant variable at this line, and then we get 0. That's because, like we said, const is for constant value. It's not for variable that we wish to reassign. So you should never ever use const inside this kind of for loop. This kind of for loop. There are for loops you can use const, but this traditional for loop, you shouldn't use const. Don't even use var, because var has weird behavior. Okay, so stick with let. And as a disclaimer, in 2026, you probably don't want to bother yourself with var at all. But this is just for educational purposes why I'm talking about it. The strange behaviors of var have been fixed with let and const keyword. So stick with let and const keyword. In fact, use const most of the time because const helps with proper memory management. Okay, but if you wish to reassign a variable, you can use let. Okay, now let's look at const keyword. Let's look at const keyword. The other time when we declare a variable, we did var greet, and then we're able to log it by doing console.log greet. Okay, and then we get undefined. We cannot do this with var. If I change this with we cannot do this with const. If I change this to const, you see, my ID is complaining. This is not going to work. So whenever you have const, you are declaring and assigning it the same time. So if I change this to hello, this works. Okay? And then I can log it to the console. Great. It works. You see? Hello. So for variables declared with const, those variables are constants. We cannot reassign them. Okay? So when we declare them, we have to assign values to them at the point of declaration. Now, this rule applies to the variable reference, it doesn't stop us from mutating variables declared with const keyword. Okay? Let me show you. Okay, let me show you this. If we do const user, for instance, and then we have objects. Okay? Inside this, if I say name, it's Ola. Okay? And then after that, maybe I say gender is male. Okay? So pay attention. I'm declaring this. I'm defining this object with const keyword user. Okay? Now I can mutate this even with const keyword. Okay? So this is what I want you to know. The rule that says you cannot reassign only applies to the value. It doesn't apply to when we attempt to mutate the value. Mutate means to change. Okay? So which means I can do user, user dot token equals 1, 2, 3. Okay? Then let's see, console.log user. Let's see what we have. See what we have. We get gender, male, name, Ola, token. So I'm able to mutate the variable even though I have defined it with const keyword. I'm still able to mutate it to assign new property to this object even though the variable was declared with const keyword. You get what I'm saying? So the reassignment, that rule that says we cannot reassign, it's in reference to the value that the variable holds, but we can still mutate the value in a collection like this. This is an example of a collection. It's object data type. Okay, so this is how we assigning property to an object. Anyway, we use a dot notation. So user dot token equals. So this token is the new key. So this is key. This is value. Together they are called properties. Okay, so this is a property. This is a property. So I'm assigning new property, setting the key to token, and then the value to 1 to 3. And then when I log user to the console, I get the 3 properties, even though I have defined this object with const keyword. So const does not stop us from mutating a collection. Okay? Let's try something else. Okay, let's do const fruits equals banana, orange, mango. Okay, banana, orange, mango. Now I'm using const keyword. I want to mutate this value. I want to assign another value, another fruit to this array. So I can do fruits dot push. So we use push method to push new values into JavaScript array. Let's say guava. Okay, and if I say console.log fruits, let's see what we get. See, I get banana, orange, mango, guava. So const keyword does not it does not disallow us from mutating the value that the variable is pointing to. Okay, it's just that we cannot reassign the value. What I'm saying is, say I have done this now, and I come here and say fruit is equals to this, and then I say console.log fruits. Let's see what happens. See, I get an error, uncut type error. Okay, so I cannot reassign, I cannot change the type. So this is an array. I'm now reassigning this fruit variable. I'm reassigning it to an object. I'm going to get an error. So the rule for const is you cannot reassign the variable type, but then you can mutate the value of that variable. Okay? Mutate means to replicate anyway, to change, if that makes sense. Okay? So this is what we have for our JavaScript variables. Let me do another example to just drill this in again. Okay, let's say const array equals HTML, CSS. Okay, let me stop at that. Then I can add to this array push. So I have JavaScript. Okay, then I can say console.log array. See, I'm getting HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So I'm able to mutate it, even though I define this with const keyword. Okay, we can also loop through by using const, although we have not talked about loop yet. So let me just show you. So I can do const value of array, and I say console.log value. Okay, so what do we get? We get HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Okay, so that works. I'm going to stop for now. I think I hope you've learned something in this tutorial. And so for as a closing, stay away from var. Use const for most of the time. If you need to reassign a variable, then you use let. Don't mess with var. Leave var alone. JavaScript has given us let and const keyword. So if you're declaring or you're defining a constant value, use const like this, like const pi, for instance, is equals to 3.14. You have no desire to change pi. Pi is 3.14, at least approximately. So when you're doing something like this in your program, use const. Don't use var. Okay? So if I just do console.log pi, sure enough I should get 3.14. Okay? So this is for this tutorial. I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.